So in the OHL right now, it seems like we have a group at the top, which is having some strong play right now, and then another group at the bottom of the overall standings that's been struggling to get a string of wins together. And that's having a bit of an impact here on this week's edition of the Power Rankings. There's been a few big movers, and some teams just status quo from last week. So let's dive right into it with team number 20. And that's the Ottawa 67s. No change for them from last week, as it's just been a struggle for the Ottawa 67s. 0-3 was their record last week, and they now find themselves out of the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference. They're tied with North Bay with 40 points, but the Battalion, they do have the tiebreaker. So that's why North Bay right now sitting 8th and Ottawa in 9th. And coming up this week, it is a pretty busy schedule for the 67s. It starts Wednesday at home against the Peterborough Petes, and then Thursday they're in Peterborough. Now remember, the Petes, they're 5 points back of Ottawa in the Eastern Conference standings. So that home and home is going to be huge between the Barber Poles and the Maroon and White. This could basically decide whether or not Peterborough has a chance of making the playoffs or not. So keep an eye on that series coming up this week. And then for Ottawa, they are home to the Kitchener Rangers on Sunday. And then on Family Day Monday, they're home to the North Bay Battalion. Number 19, it's the North Bay Battalion. They dropped one position this week. Now, this past week, it was successful in one way. They're now in a playoff spot, although they lost all three of their games last week. They were 0-2-1, but that overtime loss in Guelph gave them the point they needed to back into a playoff position. So it's quite the race right now for that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference standings. North Bay, they're now 2-7-1 over their last 10 games. So the Turtle Derby continues between North Bay and Ottawa, but Peterborough, they're now 5 points out of that final playoff spot. So it's going right down to the wire here in the East. This week for the North Bay, they are home to Brampton on Thursday. They visit the Barrie Colts on Saturday and then travel to Ottawa on Monday. Now that game also going to be quite significant there between Ottawa and North Bay and deciding the standings in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. At number 18, I have the Sioux Greyhounds. They moved up one position this week. The Greyhounds opened the road trip with a 7-4 win over North Bay. They looked pretty good for most of the game in Barrie. It was just an 11-second difference where the Colts managed 2 goals to take the lead late in the third period. And then they were shut out by the Oshawa Generals. So for the Sioux, they do hold on to that final playoff spot in the Western Conference, but that lead is now down to 2 points over the Owen Sound Attack. So I think I might have to do a video sometime this week, maybe looking at the playoff race for that final playoff position in the Western Conference. Now, this week for the Sioux Greyhounds, they're home to Saginaw Wednesday. Friday, they visit the London Knights. Saturday, they're in Sarnia. And then on Monday, they're in Brantford. At number 17, the Owen Sound Attack. They dropped one position this week. Owen Sound, their record was 1-2 last week, but that was a 4-1 win over North Bay, and that moved them within 2 points of the Sioux for that final playoff spot. And Pierce Boyd, what a solid week again for him. A hat trick in the game against the Kitchener Rangers. That was a game the Attack ended up losing, but then he had 6 points in total over 3 games. So the rookie forward making a name for himself with the Owen Sound Attack and could make some history with the goal-scoring capabilities that he has. Now for the Attack this week, they're home to Erie on Friday and Saturday, so back-to-back games at home against the Otters. And then on Monday, they travel to Windsor. At number 16, it's the Niagara Ice Dogs. They fell 3 positions this week, and it has been a rough few weeks for the Ice Dogs. They went from leading the Central Division a month ago to now sitting 5th in the Eastern Conference, 9 points behind the Barrie Colts. For Niagara, they're 2-5-1-2 over their last 10 games, and they were 0-2 last week, and they were outscored 16-4 in those 2 losses to Sudbury and Kitchener. Now, this week for the Ice Dogs, they will be in Erie on Wednesday. They visit Brantford Friday. Sunday, they're home to Brantford, and then on Family Day Monday, they will be in Brampton. At number 15, I have the Brampton Steelheads, who are up 2 positions this week. And what a bounce-back week it was for the Steelheads. 2-0 is their record, wins over Erie and Kingston, and they outscored their opponent 16-3. Carson Rakoff, a 6-point game against the Erie Otters, and then added another goal in the game against Kingston, while Jack Ivankovic earned his second shutout of the season. So let's see if this is a turning point for the Brampton Steelheads. Many have expected them to really make a charge here in the second half, but they kind of sputtered a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if this is their turning point. This week, they will be in Sudbury on Wednesday. They visit North Bay Thursday. Saturday, they're in Oshawa. So that's going to be a big measuring stick for them. And then on Monday, they're home to the Niagara Ice Dogs. At number 14, I have the Guelph Storm. They're up one position. Now, Guelph, yes, they're at the bottom of the Western Conference standings, but they've been playing some decent hockey of late. For the Storm, they were 1-1-1 last week. The loss, they still put up 7 goals against the Saginaw Spirit. That was a 10-7 final over the weekend. And with the Sioux Greyhounds struggling ahead of them in the standings, they're now 5 points out of that final playoff spot. So that race in the West starting to heat up here with under 20 games remaining in the regular season. And for Jet Luchenko, 2 goals, 2 assists in that game against the Saginaw Spirit. So for the Guelph Storm, the playoff hopes are still there. And this week they will be in Sarnia Wednesday. Friday they're home to Oshawa. Saturday they visit the Flint Firebirds. And then on Monday they're home to Sudbury. At number 13, I have the Peterborough Petes. They're up another spot as well. And last week didn't start off the greatest for Peterborough. They lost 7-2 at home to Flint. But then they were on the road and they played a very tight game against the London Knights. They ended up losing that one by a score 3-1. And then they won 3-2 in a shootout over the Sarnia Sting. So they got a point to end the week. And they're right now in the thick of it for that battle for the final playoff spot. 5 points back of North Bay and Ottawa for the final playoff spot. And they've actually had the better record over their last 10 games compared to North Bay and Ottawa. They're 4-6. So they're gaining ground and 5 points back, like I said. So the Peterborough Petes, we didn't think they would make the playoffs in the first half of the season after their very slow start to the season. But here they are. They've got nothing to lose. That's basically it. And this week, a very big home-and-home series. Wednesday, they're in Ottawa. Thursday, home to the 67s. And then Saturday, they're home to Kingston. And Monday, they host the Kitchener Rangers. So that home-and-home series could kind of decide the outlook of the rest of the season here for the Peterborough Petes. At number 12, I have the Sudbury Wolves. They are down one position this week. And it was a struggle for the Sudbury Wolves. They were 1-2 last week. But you have to give them some credit. They played a much better game against the Brantford Bulldogs on the road, as that was the second half of a home-and-home. They still lost that game, but they only gave up 2 goals as opposed to 10. Now, Sudbury, they're 2-8 over their last 10 games, and they're 6th in the Eastern Conference standings, just 1 point ahead of Brampton. So not too long ago, Sudbury was looking at as one of those teams at the trade deadline that could contend maybe for the Central Division lead, but now they've fallen off and trying not to fall too far down the Eastern Conference standings. This week for Sudbury, they're home to Brampton on Wednesday. They're in Flint Friday. Saturday, they visit Saginaw. And then on Monday, they visit the Guelph Storm. At number 11, I have the Sarnia Sting. They fell 3 positions this week. It was a bit of a setback for Sarnia. They were 0-1-1. And despite the losses, though, Mitch Young, he's been contributing with the offense. A goal and an assist in the shootout loss to Peterborough. And he had a goal and 2 assists over the last 2 games, so not too shabby for the defenseman. Coming up on Wednesday, they're home to Guelph. Thursday, they visit Windsor. Saturday, they're home to the Sioux Greyhounds. And then on Monday, they host the Saginaw Spirit. At number 10, it's the Erie Otters. No change from last week. And the Otters are kind of hard to figure out right now. They had to come back to defeat Guelph in a shootout. Then they lost 10-3 to Brampton, and then cruised to a 7-4 win over Sudbury. So a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation going on right now with the Erie Otters. So the offense, we know they can score in bunches. It's just that consistency. And right now they're 4-6 over their last 10 games. This week, they host the Niagara Ice Dogs on Wednesday before traveling to Owen Sound for games Friday and Saturday. And then they wrap up the weekend with a trip to Oshawa on Family Day Monday. At number 9, the Flint Firebirds. They are up 3 positions this week, and the road trip through the East Division, not too bad for the Firebirds, going 2-1. Connor Clattenburg, he made the best of his return to the hometown. He's, of course, from the Ottawa area, and he had 2 goals and an assist in that win over the 67s. 3 goals, 2 assists during the 3-game road trip, so not bad there for Clattenburg. For the Flint Firebirds, Friday, they're home to Sudbury. Saturday, they take on Guelph, and then Monday, they visit the London Knights. Number 8, it's the Oshawa Generals, who are down 4 spots. And I know for some this might be a surprise considering that the Oshawa Generals had a 3-0 record last week. But I look at the top 8 in the power rankings right now, and all 8 should be considered a possible contender for the OHL Championship. The thing that kind of holds Oshawa back is their opponents last week. 2 of those wins were against Ottawa, and then they wrapped it up with a win over the Sioux Greyhounds. So two teams that are at the bottom of the power rankings and teams Oshawa should beat. But if they did lose those games, then we'd be having a different conversation right now about Oshawa. They do have some big games coming up. They're going to be in Kitchener on Tuesday, so that one's going to be a big measuring stick. Friday, they're in Guelph. Saturday, they're home to Brampton. And then Monday, they host the Erie Otters. So you get some wins this week. I would expect Oshawa to climb up the power rankings once again. At number 7, I have the Saginaw Spirit. They're up 2 positions. This is one of the teams that pushed Oshawa lower in the power rankings because this team, you got to keep an eye on them right now. They're 2-1 in their last week, and it started with a 2-1 win over Windsor, who were the number 1 team in the power rankings at the time of that game. And then they had a close loss to the Brantford Bulldogs and then put up 10 against the Guelph Storm. And the Spirit, they're now the highest scoring team in the OHL, 231 goals for. It's the goals against that are still a bit of a concern. They've given up 198 goals this year. But Igor Chernyshov, he's been lights out since coming back from the San Jose Sharks. Chernyshov, he has 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points in just 5 games. So that offense right now, the Saginaw Spirit, lethal. Coming up this week, they will be in Sault Ste. Marie Wednesday. Friday, they are home to the Windsor Spitfires. Saturday, they're taking on Sudbury. And then on Monday, they visit the Sarnia Sting. At number 6, I have the Kingston Frontenacs. They're down 3 positions. And it was a busy week for the Frontenacs. They were 2-2. They opened with a 3-2 loss in Barrie. That was kind of a battle for first place in the Eastern Conference standings at the time. And then they lost Will Bishop as a result of a fight against the Brampton Steelheads. He fell on his head in that game. So we'll have to wait and see how long Bishop will be out in the lineup. But this is a very tight battle right now for top spot in the East Division. Kingston, they're now tied with Brantford and Oshawa for first with 67 points. So it's going down to the wire. And this week for Kingston, they're home to Kitchener Friday. Saturday, they travel to Peterborough. And then on Monday, a big game against the Barrie Colts. At number 5, the Kitchener Rangers are up 1 position this week. The Rangers, they're now the second team in the OHL to clinch a playoff spot following a 9-1 victory on the road against the Niagara Ice Dogs. And for Kitchener, their record 2-1 last week. The lone loss, of course, on the road against the London Knights. And this Rangers team, they're 3 points back for first in the Midwest Division behind London. However, the Knights do have 3 games in hand. So it is a close race, but the Knights, they do have that inside lane when it comes to the Midwest Division. Now, this week for Kitchener, they're home to Oshawa Tuesday. That should be a big one. Friday, they travel to Kingston. Sunday, they're in Ottawa. And then on Monday, they visit the Peterborough Petes. At number 4, I have the Brantford Bulldogs up 1 position this week. And for Brantford, they just keep on collecting points. They were 2-0-1 last week. They're now in a 3-way tie for first in the East Division. And they're riding a 6-game point streak. So 5-0-1 is their record. And Nick Lardis continues to find the back of the net. 52 goals now on the season. That sets a new franchise record for the Bulldogs. So quite remarkable there from Nick Lardis. Coming up this week for Brantford, they're home to Niagara on Friday. Sunday, they visit Niagara. And then on Monday, they're home to the Sioux Greyhounds. At number 3, I have the Barrie Colts, who are up 4 spots this week. The Colts, another team in the East that's collecting points. Barrie went 2-0 last week, wins over Kingston and the Sioux, extending their point streak now to 10 games. They're 9-0-1 over their last 10 games. They haven't had a regulation loss now in quite some time. Owen Van Steensel also earned his first goal as a member of the Barrie Colts, and you could just see the relief on his face after scoring that goal. So some positives here for the Colts, because that North Bay line, it's had some challenges since the trade deadline, but if this line can heat up as many expect it will, that's just going to add to the forward depth of this Barrie Colts team as the offense has picked up its game a bit. This week for Barrie, a huge matchup at home against London on Thursday. Saturday, they're home to North Bay, and then on Monday, they visit the Kingston Frontenacs. At number 2, it's the Windsor Spitfires. They're down 1 position this week. Windsor, of course, they were number 1 of the power rankings last week, but that was short-lived, just 1 week at the top. They were knocked down a position after their loss at home to the Saginaw Spirit, but they did go 2-1. So it was a big overtime win against the Brantford Bulldogs, one of the hottest teams in the OHL. And Ilya Protas, he scored the game winner in that one, so not too shabby there for the Spitfires. It's also encouraging, though, that this team is still focused on trying to finish first in the Western Conference standings. because it would be easy for them to start coasting towards the playoffs. They have a 19-point lead right now on Saginaw, who are second in the West Division. So it's good that they still have a goal. They're focused. They're dialed in, because as soon as this team starts to coast, that's when bad habits can start to produce. And for this young Windsor Spitfires team and Greg Walters, just wanting to make sure this team still has a focus on a goal for the rest of this regular season. Now, coming up this week for Windsor, they're home to Sarnia on Thursday. Friday, they visit Saginaw. And then on Monday, they're home to the Owen Sound Attack. So that leaves us with number one. It's the London Knights, up one position this week. For London, they've managed to take over top spot in the power ranking after going 2-0 last week. A couple of tight games against Kitchener and Peterborough, but it just goes to show this team, they know how to adapt depending on their opponent. And the biggest question, though, facing this team is the situation involving Cam Allen after being charged for impaired driving. That charge was announced yesterday. The 20-year-old defenseman, he was a big addition before the OHL trade deadline from the Guelph Storm. So it's going to be fascinating to see how does the team respond. I'm going to do a video, focusing more so on the situation as this is big. It's huge news. And we'll have to wait and see what happens next year for Cam Allen, because they do have some big games this week. They're in Barrie on Thursday, so first in the West versus first in the East. And then on Friday, they're home to the Sioux, and then Monday, they host the Flint Firebirds. So that's how I see it from the booth. Just a note, Family Day is next Monday, so there won't be a Power Rankings video next Monday. That next week's Power Rankings will be released on Tuesday, so take note of that. But still, we've got some big games coming up in the week ahead. Let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on the past week or what you're looking forward to coming up next around the Ontario Hockey League. So again, thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you again soon.